Let's go through all 12 books that I read in November and December from worst to best. Of those 12 books, 4 were fantasy, 3 were sci-fi, 2 were romance, 2 were Christian, and 1 was a thriller. So kind of a good mix of a bunch of different genres. And my ratings for them kind of cover the whole range. My lowest rating was 2 stars, but then on the other end, I had a few 5-star ratings in the past couple months. I actually read a lot of books from the library or on my Kindle, so I only have 5 of the 12 books here, but I'm still going to be talking about all of them. Ranking in 12th place with 2 stars was Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. Unfortunately, this book was such a disappointment for me. This was Stephanie Garber's newest release, and she also wrote the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, which I loved. She wrote Caraval, which I haven't read yet, but is on my physical TBR, and I'm wanting to get to it this year. I did like the magical vibes in this book, but the story itself felt a little bit like a wild goose chase, like there wasn't much payoff or clarity at the end of the book. And I do think she is going to make this book into a series, whereas I originally thought it was a standalone. So perhaps that's why she didn't really want to give any answers in the book. But I feel like you have to have some answers. You can't just have these characters seeking answers with absolutely no payoff and then just leaving you on a cliffhanger, not knowing anymore, just to get them to read the rest of the series. But unfortunately, that's how Alchemy of Secrets felt. We were following Holland throughout the story. She goes back and forth between all these different characters of who to trust. And among those are a bunch of different love interests. There's other characters she goes back and forth between trusting as well. But it just made it very difficult to feel attached to any of the characters at all besides Holland herself, because the other characters kept kind of popping in and out of the story. And again, we just never really got more answers in the end. It was confusing, it was unsatisfying, and honestly kind of gave me whiplash to read with how much back and forth there was. So unfortunately, I will not be continuing that series. On to 11th place with 2.5 stars is Fierce Women by Kimberly Wagner. This is a Christian book that I actually read for a book club, so it wasn't very applicable to me personally, and that's kind of part of why I rated it lower. It is a book about marriage, but I do also think there's just some better books on that topic. But for this book in particular, it really focused a lot on kind of some major issues that you could be dealing with in marriage, specifically anger or control issues. So if you have an emotionally and spiritually healthy marriage, I don't think the book would be super applicable for you. There were some good tidbits of information, but it was kind of things that I already just inherently knew, like don't yell at your spouse. That's not really something I needed to read or be told to know, but some people that might be very helpful for. The tone of the book was also very negative, and I don't know, I didn't really like it. There are better Christian marriage books out there in my opinion. Number 10, also with 2.5 stars, Fearful by Lauren Roberts. I got this book a while ago, right when it came out, and then I heard a lot of negative things about the book. Nothing really specific, I just kind of knew that this book was not well loved. People were kind of disappointed by it, and unfortunately, even though I went into this with an open mind, I do feel the same way. This is the conclusion to the Powerless trilogy. This is a novella that kind of goes along at the same time as Fearless, which is the third book, the final book in the trilogy. I really loved Powerful, which is the other novella in this series, so I was hoping to love this too. I just realized I'm holding the book upside down. Okay, basically this book wasn't really what I was expecting. It followed Kit, and it also gave us the perspective of Mara, who is Death. And I feel like that had the potential to be very cool, getting Mara's perspective, having this woman who is Death itself. But I feel like we didn't really get to know her in this story. I also feel like we didn't get to know more about Kit and his intentions, or I guess we did, but I just still felt like there were no redeemable qualities for Kit, even with what we got to know. Basically, there was no explanation for his behavior. I just feel like he was kind of selfish, which is a bummer because I did not like him in Fearless, and I was hoping that Fearful would change my mind. Mara, on the other hand, was very cool. However, we didn't really get to know much of her backstory or her day-to-day life. We got snippets of it, but instead her perspective was more so focused on following around other people. Specifically in this story, she followed Lenny and Blair a lot of the time, and I actually found their story to be interesting, cute. We got some new information about them, but I did not like how the story was told because it was told through Death's perspective, and I almost wish with what this book was about that the book itself would have just been completely from Lenny and Blair's perspectives. I think that would have been more interesting than what we got. Moving on to 9th place with 3 stars, I have The Toll by Neal Shusterman. This is the 3rd and final book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. This was my least favorite book in the trilogy. It just did not hold my attention like the other two. I actually ended up pausing in the middle of this book and reading a whole nother book and then coming back to this just because I wasn't enjoying it, unfortunately. I did like parts of it. I did not completely dislike this book, but we weren't following our 2 main characters or any of our other kind of like main side characters as much as I wanted. We got a lot of new perspectives in this book, which is something I liked in the first 2 books, that we got so many perspectives, but it almost felt like there was too much going on in this book. And that ended up pulling me out of the story more than I would have liked. I also think that the focus on those other perspectives took away from the POVs that I actually wanted more of. So I was just kind of bummed by that. There were also a lot of time jumps back and forth in this book, which was cool except for the fact that it wasn't clear when the storyline was taking place. We were in different parts of time with different perspectives, and it just wasn't super clear. This is also a very long book. It's over 600 pages. This was the longest book that I read in 2025. It did use all of those pages well to kind of wrap up the story and answer any and all of the questions that I had, so I did appreciate that, but overall this book was kind of just okay. In 8th place, An Academic Affair by Jodi McAlister. This is an academic rivals romance, and I really loved parts of this book, especially the focus on academia and the struggles that Sadie and Jonah had with basically their careers, trying to get jobs, being overworked, and what the academia industry is like. I found that super duper interesting, but the actual romance part of it I didn't love as much. It felt like a very one-sided relationship. There's a lot of really sweet yearning from Jonah's side of things, and it is a marriage of convenience. But on Sadie's side, the book focused a lot on this drama between her and her sister, and instead of focusing on the relationship, she was really caught up in being sad and the drama of that. So I didn't really feel an emotional connection to the relationship from her side as much. So I think the big disconnect between them there and the focus on the drama is why I gave this one a lower rating. In 7th place with 3.5 stars, Woman Down by Colleen Hoover. This book was difficult for me to rate because I absolutely loved most of it. But there is a trope in here that I just don't like at all, and that is cheating. And you will know from the start of the relationship that there's a lot of infidelity in this book and in their relationship. That's kind of what the whole relationship is actually focused on. And so it is a critical part to the story, but I just did not like reading spicy scenes that involve an affair. On the other hand, this was absolutely an incredible thriller, very compelling, quick to read, gave me so much anxiety and made me want to find out what was going on. So loved it in that sense. But yeah, it just had that one trope that was a major part of the story that I just did not like. In 6th place with 4 stars, Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. This is also a Christian book, and I also read this one for a book club similar to the other Christian book that I read in the past couple months. This was good. It gave some good insight for how to more closely align your day-to-day life to be spending time with God and becoming more like Jesus. So this provoked a lot of thoughtful conversations with myself and my husband, with our small group through our church, and I just enjoyed it. This is a good Christian book to read. Number 5, Books and Bewitchment by Isla Jewell. I also gave this one 4 stars. I had such a fun time with this book. The writing style is super quirky, very amusing. I was thoroughly entertained while reading this and absolutely loved our main character. She's so funny, and it's this Southern humor, kind of Bible Belt humor. So if you've ever lived in the South, you'll probably find it very funny. The story is focused on Rhea, who leaves her hometown to go open up a bookstore in a small town, and along the way she finds out that she is a witch. So there's some magic in the story. The story also focuses on a family feud, but it doesn't feel like too much drama. It's just kind of funny and does drive the plot along. So I liked this story. I wish we would have seen a little bit more of the magic, but I had a fun time. Number 4, If It Makes You Happy by Olivia. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This is a very cozy fall read. I read this one in November. It was a great way to finish out fall. It is set in the 90s and it is a romance, and I absolutely loved the setting of the book. Not just the small town in Vermont where they are, the fall season, but I really did love the 90s vibes and just seeing a relationship, a romance where you don't have cell phones, and just how our characters spend time together. The guy is a single dad, he's a baker. The girl is running an inn in this small town. She just came from a big city. There's a really cute dynamic between Cliff's daughters and Michelle, and how she kind of becomes sort of a role model for them. That was cute to see, and it was also cool to see how tight-knit this small town community is. So even though the storyline is pretty predictable, it was a very fun fall book. In 3rd place with 5 stars, meaning all the rest of the books in this video are 5 stars, Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. This is the 2nd book in the Archipascythe trilogy. So yes, I read both this and The Toll in the past couple months and loved this book. Absolutely loved how many perspectives we got. I was very intrigued and drawn into the story. Loved that we learned more about the Thunderhead, which is this kind of AI that rules their society. There's a religious group in this book, the Tonists, and we got to learn more about them. I really enjoyed this. There was a big twist at the end, and that made me want to immediately jump into reading The Toll, which is what I did. So even though I didn't love the Toll as much. It was kind of just okay. Overall, I do really love this series. In second place, also 5 stars, Phantasma by Kaylie Smith. I read this one for a book club and it was such a fun book club pick. I really enjoyed the book. It is a dark romantasy with a gothic atmosphere, dangerous trials, and there is OCD representation, which was woven really cleverly throughout the story. It was so cool to see and it fit in really well. I loved how the author portrayed it. I equally loved the romance in this book and the fantasy, the storyline. I feel like a lot of times with romantasy, it's easy to prefer the romance or the fantasy setting and story itself, but this book did a great job and I loved everything about it. There's kind of this carnival going on that no one has ever won and survived, and it goes through all of the layers of hell. So that's what each of the trials are. The ending of the book I did not expect, but I really enjoyed it. I bought the second book, Enchantra, right after reading this one. I have not read that one yet, but Phantasma and Enchantra both follow different characters, so you can just kind of read Phantasma as a standalone. The ending is really neat, but it doesn't leave off on a cliffhanger where you have to go and read the next book. Although it's really good, so you're gonna want to. And then in first place, my favorite book that I've read over the past couple of months is Wool by Hugh Howey. This is a sci-fi book and it has a TV show based on it now called Silo. And this is a series, so Wool is the first book in the Silo series. I did also watch the TV show, at least the first 2 seasons. There's only 2 seasons out so far, but they are making more. But the book is really cool. It's about this world that's not survivable, and so these people live underground in a silo and they don't know what's going on. They don't know if they've been lied to and the world is actually survivable, or if it's not safe to go outside, and so it's kind of complicated whether or not people believe what they're being told. The book gives us so many different perspectives and it is told in the format of 5 short stories, so I really enjoyed that because we kind of got our questions answered and little hints at what was going on throughout the whole story instead of just leading up to one big reveal at the end. I'm actually reading Shift right now, which is the second book in the Silo series, and I feel like that one's probably going to be a 5-star for me too. Interestingly enough, even though it's the second book in the series, it is the prequel to Wool, so we get more and more answers and more explanation of what exactly is going on. Although we did get a lot of that in Wool, the first book, which I really appreciated. Let me know if you've read or are going to read any of the books that I talked about in this wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see me reading more books and talking about them, be sure to subscribe and I will see you in the next one.